Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Morning.
Thank you. Glad to hear you. Glad to know you can hear me. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes. I've got 11:28, so we'll let a few minutes and then we'll get going. I'm glad to see you here. Today's Good Friday, and I couldn't remember whether Bunker Hill observed it or not. I know many of the public schools do, but I couldn't find it on the calendar, so I was sure that we were going to meet. But I heard from one student who wondered whether we were meeting. There was actually something on the calendar about a professional day yesterday, and there were no afternoon classes, but there's nothing about today. So I'm sure we should be here, and I appreciate you showing up.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Likas.
Yep.
I actually was really busy this week, so I didn't get a chance to complete the assignment from last week. So is it okay if I do it this week?
Yes, although I'm going to ask that people do it till Monday. You'll see, Tyler, that you weren't alone. There were only a couple of students when I checked this morning had submitted their homework from last week, but I'll take that up when we go over the assignments. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to go one more minute. Here, a couple more.
I like they were going last night. Why is not peanut? And I didn't eat it because I've ordered a KFC, not knowing he's giving food back. So have that for lunch.
Hey, Monty, I think you please mute yourself. I think that's you. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. We may have a few more joining, but and actually I may have forgotten to open my slides. Give me just a second. Hold on. Okay, let me just try to get the screen set up. Okay, good to see you. Let me show you what we have in store. So I'm going to back up. I want us to think just a little bit more about bullet in the brain. And I think there's kind of an important lesson from that story that we didn't take up last week that I want us to reflect on a minute. It's not just, it is the advantage of art, but it's also the advantage of reading, media, all sorts of writing that we'll think about just a little bit. And after we finish that, I'll orient you for your next essay, and I'll be assigning it next week. I didn't want to assign another essay until I'd graded all of them I'd received and seen your responses to the two graduation speeches. And even if you had turned them in, I wouldn't have been able to look at them by today. So anyway, we'll talk about that too. I'm also then going to go over our essay rubric. And I'm probably remiss not to do this even earlier, but it'll give you a much better idea of how I go about grading your essays. And so we'll take a look at that. And today we're going to also think about just the structure of essays. And I've got a homework assignment for that. And you may have heard of Taylor Mali before. He's a spoken word poet who writes a lot about and performs a lot about teaching themes. And I'm going to get you to look at one of his videos for homework and do an assignment around that. So I'll introduce you to him. So let's get going because there's a lot here. So just to refresh our memory about bullet in the brain, you know, we had it very clearly and realize you do need to refresh your memory because you're not going to get your topic that you might write. You might choose it to write on and you won't get that till next Friday. So it may be, I would suggest that once you get your assignments, you go back and look at this story, think about this story, think about the 2 graduation speeches, and you only need to write about one of those, but choose the one that you're most comfortable with. But anyway, let's refresh our memory a minute. Before the shooting, after the shooting, a little bit more detail. We meet Anders and see the robbery. Then we learn about what he does not remember and what he did remember. And we had these questions, which really those of you who answered did a very fine job with. I was really pleased to see your response to the story. And we talked last week about why the story was powerful and what its big idea was. But I want to come at this from a slightly different angle. And so I want us to think about the advantages of reading and writing. So just ponder this first bullet for a second. Before there was the printed word, how did people learn? What would be the limits on your learning if you didn't have access to anything written?
Your memory?
And where would your memory come from, Tyler?
Experience.
I'm sorry, who said that? And what did you say?
Experience.
Yeah, experience. Think about it. Before there was media, written, word, drawing, the only thing you could learn from was your own experience. And we would all be fairly limited if the boundaries of our knowledge were circumscribed, you know, were confined to what we could personally experience. And so think about how the printed word, and with that plays and stories, movies, essays, research, how they accelerate learning. And I was surprised at one point in my life to come across the idea that one of the big fueling factors of the Industrial Revolution was the advent of scientific journals of research, because suddenly people could share knowledge. And, you know, scientific research is a trial and error process. Many things get proven that later get disproven and vice versa. And, but still, because there were scientific journals, knowledge spread at a much faster rate. And so that might have fueled the Industrial Revolution, but I think I want us all to consider how just our access to reading and movies and, you know, everything, all these other things, how much they accelerate our own learning too. And so think about bullet in the brain for a second. Here's an imagined experience that we can all read, participate in, and learn from. And compare that to the idea of a real experience. This tells about a horrible thing, a man being shot in the middle of a robbery. And we know, we live in, unfortunately, you know, the most violent country of industrial, you know, of the advanced economies in the world. We have the highest degree of violence, the highest degree of gun violence. And, you know, and virtually everyone in one way or another is touched by that, either because of people who lose their lives to gun violence who are close to us, or just through the horrible things we hear in the news week after week, you know. And if you know, what literally happens in this story is horrendous. And yet, because it's told as a story and with such, you know, with such skill, we experience it in a very different way and we can learn from it. And, you know, to put it crudely, it's a lot nicer. It's a great, much more beneficial thing to encounter that story and learn what we can that way than we had ever learned from having a bullet in our own brain. And so just this is kind of a privilege, you know, of learning, that you can experience things that you can encounter things that would be horrible to live through in real life, but you experience them in a different way in an imagined realm. And that just seems, after the fact, that seemed very important to me about that story. You may know the story, A Good Man's Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. It's often taught. Some of you may have had it, but it's have studied it before. But the short version is a family goes on a vacation with a grandmother, and they learn when they leave that a murderer has just escaped from prison. And they wind up getting on the wrong road because of something the grandmother wants to do, and the car wrecks, and along comes the murderer. And he and his henchmen want their car, and one by one, they kill off the family. And the grandmother's the last one left, and she reaches out to him sort of and says, you know, you're my son or something, and he shoots her. And his henchmen say, you know, she sure did talk a lot. They kind of make fun of her. And he said, she would have been a good woman if she had had someone there to shoot her every day of her life. So this is kind of an Old Testament version that if we were punished enough, we would be a lot better. And there's a kind of variation of this in this story, because had Anders survived that bullet, he may have looked at his life differently, but it was over. But what these stories do is they give us a way of confronting these horrible experiences and seeing how they affect the characters in them, but giving us a chance to take stock in a different way. And that's some of what you'll be doing in the essay I assign next week. That'll be one of your options. But it's just to say we can learn from these things when we would never want to experience them. Okay? Does that make sense to you? Any questions about that? May just be a long ramble, but it seems an important thing for this story. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what about people who don't learn from the mistakes they've made in the past?
Well, you know, often we don't. You know, we would all be better people if we could learn from everything that we have, but we have the opportunity to. And, you know, that's just one of the gifts of life, one of the facts of life. But, you know, we could say we're slow learners. You know, we could say that some of the things that might be most important to learn, we learn too late or never learn. But we do have the opportunity to. That's about as much as I can say about it, Tyler.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so as I mentioned, Tyler acknowledged that he hadn't done his homework on George Saunders and Stephen Jobs. This morning, I tried to look just to see what I had received. I saw only 2 people had turned in their homework. That's a really poor rate. So it's really important that those of you who have not done that assignment, that you go ahead and do it, because your essay next week, you'll have the choices of writing about one of those speeches or the bullet in the brain. It's actually not the bullet, it's just bullet. And again, you know, I think at least 3 of you, there may have been 4, wrote 2 essays last time. I didn't mean to confuse you that way, and I apologize. Although I'm glad you did the extra work, and those of you who did it looked like you got something out of it. But next week, you'll either write about, it will be either the George Saunders speech or the Stephen Jobs speech or the bullet in the brain, only one of those 3. The advantage of doing your homework and looking into them, then you can see which one you feel most comfortable writing about. One of the important things about choosing a topic, almost all teachers try to give you options. And the reason you have an option is that one may strike you as you may connect better with than another. But if you don't read and do that homework, you don't you limit your choices, okay? And you really may find that one of those pieces is far preferable to you. So I'm going to ask that I want next Friday to be able to talk about those two speeches. And so I will have been able to read your homework by then. So I'm going to ask that you, if you're going to do that homework, do it by Monday. Okay. And I'll say Monday night because I'm not going to start on it until after that. But you should do it as soon as you can, but be sure you've done it by Monday. All right. So that's all on that. I'll say that again when I go over the homework at the end. So I want to, how many of you in school did you all use grading rubrics? Are you familiar with those? Anyone not familiar? Let me put it that way.
I have never heard of this before.
Who is that, Tyler?
Tyler, yes.
Anyone else not heard of this?
I'm also not
Me
sure
too.
about what that is.
Either.
Okay. Well, let me,
Me either.
don't be concerned if you hadn't. I don't believe I ever encountered grading rubrics when I was a student 150 years ago, but I learned about them through my children. Okay. I would see them bring them home. And I think that they are a great help when you have them. The idea of a rubric is it identifies what goes into a grade. So in our case, it's going to, when we look at it in just a second, you'll see it identifies the key characteristics of an essay. And for each characteristic, it gives a spectrum of what would be a weak performance and what would be an advanced performance. And that'll be less abstract when we look at the rubric. So the idea is that the rubric's basically helping you understand how do you tell an effective essay from a weak one. And the more you understand the rubric, it should help you understand what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to write, and what things, if you leave out, are going to hurt you, and which things you need to pay attention to do better. Okay. So with that, let me put the rubric up. And I've now posted this into your essay folder. So you can find a copy of it there after class. But and this is a little tricky. It's here, give me just a second. Let me try to maximize the screen. Oh, come on. I'm not finding my maximize. All right, well, let me just scroll and get as much of it on at once as I can. So let's just first of all kind of look at it in a holistic way and see how it's laid out. All right, there are 3 columns that are at a pass level. And notice the best levels at the far left. That's acceptable, competent, and advanced. Jason, do you have a question?
No, I do not.
Okay. And there are 2 columns that deal with what would not be a pass, either unacceptable or outright weak. Okay, so those are that's what I meant by spectrum. Here's weak all the way over to advanced. And you know, just to play with the language a minute, advanced is saying that that's a proficient level for this particular category. So if you go row by row, these are where you'll find the characteristics. The very first one just has to do with, does your essay address the topic? Okay. Does it answer the question effectively? And so a weak response is that it does not address the topic. You can't ever write a good essay if you don't answer what you're being asked, okay? Or it doesn't adequately address it. It seems to, it may address it in a vague way. And whereas an advanced answer or response is clear and convincing, it's really plain, you've soaked in what the question's asking you and you do a good job of responding to it. The second row is closely related, okay? And it's whether does it have a thesis, which is, does it have a clear main idea that you develop in it? And so a weak response wouldn't have a thesis, which is almost like saying it doesn't address the topic. Or it has it's not really clear and it's not unified. The whole thing doesn't hang together. And again, that's almost like, what does it answer it? Whereas the better the essay, it's very obvious what the idea is. You could state some, it's even better if you state it plainly, and you can have a thesis that's clear and insightful. If you think about the essays that were just due, like most of say a thesis on the girl, a simple version of it, did you agree with the parenting in the story or disagree? That would have been your main idea. And you could take that further. You could disagree because you found it rigid. You could disagree, one of you said, because it didn't give the child enough room. It didn't take the child's opinion into question. The child was just talked to, not listened to. So all of those things, are part of what makes for a good thesis. Just how are you answering the question, and how richly do you answer it? All right, so now let's get this next row. It's pretty clear it has to do with organization. And this is going to connect to what we're going to talk about later about structure. And it's just that your essay is organized at a very simple level. Being organized means that you have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, okay? We'll talk about in a minute just better what that means and how you make it work to your advantage. But it's unacceptable if it's no clear organization. Say you jump into the body, you don't introduce your topic, or you just stop after you've written a paragraph and you don't really conclude it at the end. That would be a flaw in your organization. Minimally, you would have an introduction, adequate introduction, body, and conclusion. The more clear that is, the more distinct those are, that's better. And then you can really have a strong one. I started to present a couple of student examples today. Jason had a wonderful opening paragraph, I think, to both of his essays, because he did two. Kalia, you did as well. Just the openings were almost essays in themselves because they were so thoughtful and they gave such good detail. And so if you have a strong introduction, that puts you on a good track to do the rest of the things well. All right, so now we go from being organized to developing ideas. Developing has to do with whether you support what you're saying with sufficient detail, with examples. Do you just state this is what you think, or you do show what you think by giving enough examples behind it? And Ismahan, you did a really nice job in your revision of your essay, because there were things in your original where you just stated something, but in your revision, you gave detail and you explained better what that thought was. And so that's what developing your idea is. It's not just stopping at here's my idea. It's really going into detail and saying what's there. So the last two, let's read at you can make the most sense of the rows if you read the weakest or the strongest. But here you're talking about, on this row, this has to do with sort of the command of your language. And does it notice that the adequate reads intelligibly despite lapses in word choice and sentence clarity? You may write, it's clear what your essay is about, but there are places where it's just not clear, or you either use the wrong words occasionally, or you're not punctuating things well enough, okay? Whereas at the worst, it would be incomprehensible about those things. At the best, it flows well, and you have it's clear you've got a good voice, a distinct voice, and you're making the appropriate choices. You're writing with clarity. Excuse me, I'm a little choked up. You're writing with clarity and with a distinct voice where you can hear, a person behind what's being said. The last row, much more has to do with just mechanics. And so the weekend would be minimal grammatical or mechanical competence, lots of errors, lacking grammar and control of mechanics. You can have a C essay and still make a good number of errors if it's clear enough what you're saying, but you want to get better with that. You want to show competence. You want to minimize the lapses. We're going to talk about this a little bit more next week even, but mainly when there are errors, they distract your reader. The reader gets lost. It's kind of like you get the reader focusing on a flaw instead of the good thing you're doing. And so that's why you want to minimize those things. And again, let me say, even if it's not again, one of the challenges in a class like this is you're doing your own correcting, you're doing your own editing. I've told you that I believe that, all published writing goes through an editing process with an independent editor. And, you might think of that as you're the writer and I'm your editor trying to tell you what to correct. And the more you can correct what I point out to you, the better your writing would be. But it is a challenge when you're the only one reading something. You've got to learn to spot your own errors. And you do want to minimize them, not just to be correct, but so that they aren't a distraction. And so when you're doing a really good job, you've got a command of the mechanics and they don't get in the way. They just simply part of the clarity of what you're writing. So let me stop there. Is each row clear to anybody? Any questions about a particular row or how the spectrum works? I'll probably use this with your last couple of essays. And what I do is I like usually I'll put a check, pass or no pass. I'll then go row by row, and like there may be some that are acceptable and others that are advanced. There may be some that are unacceptable, but enough that are acceptable to help you have a pass. But I'll check off the different cells row by row, trying to give you a better sense of how your essay meets this standard. Okay. Let me stop sharing this. If no questions. Okay, so again,
yes. Will we be able to find this after class?
yeah.
Will you post it somewhere in Google Drive?
Where it in your folder, on the assignment folder for essays, I put it in there. So you would see it when you were looking at essay assignments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Likas.
Okay. All right. So let's come back. All right. Wait, that's the wrong way. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the structure of the essay. And we're going to do a little exercise that if we were meeting live, I would put you in groups to work on, but so we'll have to do it a little bit differently. But here's the simple thing about the structure of an essay. Mainly, I want you to get in your head that you always have to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And I sometimes say your introductory paragraph, I sometimes say your concluding paragraph, I might say your opening paragraph or your closing, but those are talking about your introduction and conclusion. And the bodies are all the paragraphs in between. So the simple thing, I think I said this when you did your narratives, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's one way to think about it. You don't want to start in the middle, okay? You want to set things up before you dive into your topic. You might think of it as a structure that blows up one way that we think about paragraphs. We think about paragraphs as having a topic sentence, some supporting sentences, and often a concluding sentence. And so let's just look at a paragraph. Jason, do you mind reading this for us?
I can read that.
Thank you.
High school students hate history. when they list their favorite subjects, history, I can't even say that word like that. And how do you say that? I'm sorry.
Invariably.
Invariably comes in last. Students consider history the most irrelevant of 21 subjects commonly taught in high school. Boring is the adjective they apply to it. When students can, they avoid it, even though most students get higher grades in history than in math, science, or English. Even when they are forced to take classes in history, they repress what they learn. So every year or two, another study decries what our 17-year-old don't know.
Thank you, Jason. All right, so here's a little riff on why high school students hating history. So we might look at it this way. The opening sentence is a topic sentence. High school students hate history. Then we get these various ways of understanding that. And, you know, I made this whole various ways of what does hating it mean. They never list it as a favorite. They think it's irrelevant. They can say it's boring. They avoid it, even though they do better in it than other topics. Those are specific things that support this idea. And you could say this whole thing's a kind of a concluding sentence. It may even be the conclusion is every year or two, another study decries what our 17 years don't know. But you know, the point is, you can see there's a broad statement, then it's developed, and it's kind of an ending point is made. So the structure of the essay is very similar when you have an introduction, body of supporting paragraphs, and conclusions. It's kind of like the introduction is the same function as your topic sentence. The body of supporting statements is instead of just a litany of things, you've got different paragraphs that support the idea of the essay. And then instead of just a concluding sentence, there's a concluding paragraph. Teachers often talk about a 5-paragraph essay. You've probably encountered this at some point. This is the idea that you have an opening, you introduce your topic, and that's 1 paragraph. You then have at least 3 points you're trying to make, and you have a paragraph about each of those. And those are the 3 paragraphs there. And then you have a conclusions, paragraph 5. Let's see, hold on a second. I can't remember. Yeah, let me just say this. I'm going to say it next week again with a different set of slides when we talk about introductions and conclusions. But, you know, like a very simple rule of thumb that you hear in speaking, but apply about speech making, but it applies to writing too. An introduction, you tell people what you're going to say. In the body, you say it. And then in the conclusion, you tell them what you said. The point is that you have to really reinforce. You want to tell people what you're going to say, set them up for what's to come in some fashion. And then you develop those ideas in the body. But in the end, you come back and make it clear what you said and why it was important. And we'll talk about that better next time, but I wanted to just add a little bit of connective tissue there instead of just these lists of things. So, you know, what I want you, what's really important, I want you to, you have to understand there are these 3 parts, okay? And the important thing is, you all know this. I can see it in your writing. And so we're gonna sort of test our knowledge next. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a little essay puzzle workshop. And again, if we were live, I would break you into small groups and I would give you a cut up essay where the paragraphs were just, I would have taken a paper copy and cut it up into 5 pieces, and you would have to read them and put them back in the right order. But what we're going to be trying to do is determine the right order from an essay I'm going to put on the screen in just a minute. And we're going to, instead of breaking into small groups, what I'm going to do, we're going to do this one together a little bit at a time. And then I'm going to give you a couple more for homework. So hold on, let me see. I think I need to leave now. All right, hold on just a second. Okay. Let me share this. All right. So I have an essay here. The title is The Ideal House Pet. And it's got 5 paragraphs, but they're not in the right order. Okay. Excuse me. They're not in the right order. And what I want you to do, we're going to just be quiet for a few minutes and everybody read together, or read silently, I should say. And I want you to see if you can identify the proper order. And the way you go about this is, you may start at different places. Maybe you can identify, the order of the body. But then you have to figure out where's the introduction and the conclusion. Or maybe you identify the introduction and that helps you figure out the body. But I want you to just read for a minute, and then we'll call one at a time. I'll get you to say what you think. We'll start with, what does somebody think the introduction is? Then we'll hear from someone else on what's the first paragraph of the body. What's the second paragraph of the body? What's the third paragraph of the body? And then where's the conclusion? Okay. So one of our challenges is I can't quite get the whole thing on here, but I think that's close enough. It's just leaving off one sentence at the end. And what you want to do, anyway, just read for a minute, see if you can identify the parts. And if you had the whole thing in order, say that the paragraph 5 was the introduction, and 4 was the second, and 3 was the third, and 2 was the first, the fourth, and first was the last. The answer would be 5-4-3-2-1. So I want you to put the numbers in the right order. Just jot those down for yourself. But start out, first of all, just take a minute and read this and see if you can decipher what the right order should be. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes just to read rather.
I just had to throw this in there. When you were talking about how like speeches are also kind of built this way, it reminded me a lot of like certain TED Talks that I've seen recently, and like how they it's literally the same thing. It's like they're reading an essay, basically, just with like visual help.
Yeah, it's
pretty awesome. Yeah.
There's so many good ones though too. And they're probably, this is kind of a basic recipe, whereas the more skilled you get, you may play with that in different ways. But let's see what you think. Again, I'm going to be quiet for it so that everyone has a chance to think through this. All right, why don't we try to get started? Who thinks they've identified the opening paragraph? And both tell us what it is and then tell us why you think it is the opening.
Okay.
I think I've got it. Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
Go ahead, Abdi.
Oh, it's Jason, but Whoever else is speaking, take it.
Jason, after you can go second, all right?
All right. I think the number 3 is the intro.
Okay, what makes you say that, Jason?
So I did like a process of elimination type of thing. Like the 1, 4, and 5 kind of sound like they're middle structures of this essay. Like in the first place, second place, lastly. So I just kind of threw those out. And then I thought about something that would like grab attention, like an attention grabber, the hook. And a dog is a man's best friend for me was it, rather than cats are low maintenance. And I feel like that is like, later on. And then also it's explaining why it believes that cats are better for like a better companion than dogs to some people.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. And Jason almost gave the whole show away, right? But there are such clear markers here that it's easy to do that. But notice Jason said this had a catchy intro. Okay. And Jason actually opened one of his essays that he wrote with a very nice quotation too. Where was it? Edna St. Vincent Millay, is that right?
Yes, it was.
And one strategy for a good introduction is to begin with a quotation, because it sort of cites another authority. It has a way of bringing people in. And so that's what this does here. Now, if you read A Dog is a Man's Best Friend and you saw the ideal house pet, you might think this was going to be about dogs, right? But the paragraph works toward talking about cats instead. That common saying may contain some truth, but dogs are not the only animal friend whose companionship people enjoy. For many people, a cat is their best friend. So we've just used it kind of as a Trojan horse, to get your attention so we could actually talk about cats. Despite what dog lovers may believe, now here comes the main idea. Cats make excellent house pets. Why? As they are good companions, they are civilized members of the household, and they are easy to care for. So now, one of the things Jason was right, excuse me, about using this as a process of elimination. It does have a catchy beginning, but we'll look at this again next week too. But notice it states the main idea, and it gives us a map of what's to come. They are good companions, they are civilized members of the household, and they are easy to care for. So that's going to tell us the rest of the essay is going to be about. It's put there right in black and white. You may not always do it so directly, but it's a big help in your introduction if you prepare your reader for what's to come. So that is the introduction. The main one you might have confused it with was the second, but we'll see. I think Jason hit on exactly why 3 is the more likely candidate, because it's catchy and this isn't, okay? Or isn't as much. So what then is paragraph 2? Abdi, which one's paragraph, which is the first paragraph of the body?
Yeah, well, I think it's right there. It's paragraph 2, because the first one, it ends with the thesis, and then paragraph 2, like it kind of goes into the topic of cats as that ideal house pet. Like it starts with dogs, and then it shifts your attention, and then in paragraph 2, it goes more into it.
Well, which number that we've got listed there are you saying is paragraph 2?
Paragraph 2, the same one.
This one?
Yeah. Cats are lovely. Yeah, that one.
Did anyone have another one? Notice one thing here though, Abdi. At the end of the introduction, it said they are good companions, civilized members of the household, and they're easy to care for. This restates those: low maintenance, civilized companions, and then it says more about it. So does that sound, so is it expanding on this idea that they are good companions?
No, it's restating them.
Okay, it's just restating. So what's another candidate? Someone else, what's another candidate for the first body in the paragraph? First paragraph in the body, excuse me. Which number?
I think it's number 4.
Well, all right. What makes you say that?
It makes me say that because it starts off. Notice how they say in second place. So they're talking about first place with dogs. And notice how I think it was Jason who said that they were talking about dogs in the beginning and then they psyched you out, sort of. So that kind of leads into number 4, I think.
Okay. All right. Good reasoning, but I think we could question that, and before I answer, who's got another? Who has?
Well, I mean, actually, they're using transition words to start each paragraph, so that doesn't seem like the direct next one.
So which would you think then now, Abdi?
The first paragraph, because it starts with in the first place.
Okay. So yes, notice that this essay does a great job of ordering things. In the body, we get in the first place, in the second place, and lastly, right? And if you go back and look at your opening, despite what dog lovers may believe, cats make excellent house pets. That's the broad thing. They make excellent house pets, as they are good companions. Notice up here, in the first place, people enjoy the companionship of cats. See how that mapping prepared you for what was to come next. And this is an easier essay to decipher the order because you do have these very clear transition words, right? Is that clearer now?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Abdi.
Can we just start our essays with the thesis like that? Like, can we just start with despite what dog lovers may believe? Or do we like need to, yeah, I'm just asking if we can start like that and then just, go on, right along like that.
Well, I assume so. It's a central idea.
Yeah. The thing is, Abdi, I think that realize here, your introduction is trying to pull people into your topic. And so here you get pulled in by hearing about a dog first and then it moving to cats. But one strategy, like here we said, one good strategy to open an essay is to begin with a quotation. Sometimes the best strategy is state your thesis in the very first sentence. And then you might talk about it a little bit in the opening, but you're going to develop it more fully in the body. And you probably did something close to that with your most recent essay. But the important thing is you just want to be sure you state your main idea, whether it's in the first sentence or the last. You want to be sure you get it into your introduction somewhere, because that's the thing that you're going to be really demonstrating. But now, is everybody with us here? I think, we've established that number 3 is the opening. We're going, okay, this must be the first part of the body in the first place. And it also in content matches up companionship, good companions. So now it should be obvious what the next paragraph is. If this was in the first place, what's the next paragraph? Which number?
Number 4, because it's like what they said before. And it says in the second place.
And notice this also, if we go back to this series here, good companions, they are civilized members of the household. In the second place, cats are civilized members of the household. This is a little mechanical, but it's better to be mechanical than obscure, okay? And so this is showing you can build clarity by making sure you state something before you develop it. And these transition words make it clear how everything is connecting. So this is a whole what do we mean by civilized members? Well, this is going to explain that, okay? And why that is, why you would even say that. That's an interesting idea that they're civilized. And no, let's just go slow down enough to say, unlike dogs, cats do not bark or make loud noises. Most cats don't even meow very often. They generally lead a quiet existence. Cats don't often have accidents, okay? They're easier to potty train. And, it goes on. But that's making an argument for why this person has decided, the writer has called them civilized. So the last thing is that they're easy to care for, the third thing. And so we get the transition word lastly. And this is going to say more. They don't have to have exercise. They don't need the exercise as much. It's easy to clean after them. You don't need to bathe them. I mean, it's got a whole list of things here for why they're low maintenance. So now we can come back up here and see that here's the summary. The conclusion it's going to tell you what it said, what the whole essay said. And it may state something a little bit differently, just so that it's not just a mechanical repeating, but it's helping drive home important parts. So cats are low maintenance, civilized companions. People have small living quarters or people who have small living quarters or less time for pet care should appreciate these characteristics of cats. However, many people have plenty of space and time and still opt for a cat because they love the cat personality. That's almost like a new quality. We haven't heard that word. In many ways, cats are the ideal house pet. So it's completely turned around to make the argument for cats over dogs. All right. So what I want you to see, I hope that was clear enough, even, doing it as a group and instead of in two or three of you working together. But your final answer here, the way I would want you to express the right order is 3-1-4-5-2, okay? And I'm mainly saying that because you're going to be looking at 2 more essays for your homework. And that's all you need to do. You don't rearrange them or anything. You just come up with the right code order for the numbers, okay? And I'll show you that better in just a minute. But everybody follow that okay?
Yes.
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 I hope so. And it's a kind of a simple idea, but it's a really important one. Hold on just a second. Let me get us back to our right page. Oh, wait. Oh, excuse me. All right. So, the reason I'm stressing this is I really want you to understand that an introduction's different from a conclusion. And an introduction is different from a paragraph in the body. And a paragraph in the body is different from a conclusion. And so the more you understand these basic elements, you can do a better job of writing an introduction. You can say, now I'm writing an introduction. These are the things I need to think about. Equally, when you're writing the body paragraph, you're just developing one of the ideas that's important. And the conclusion it has a lot in common with the introduction, but it's different. It's summarizing, and it's trying to see if you can highlight something that was important to learn. And the more you understand how they differ, you just have to understand how they differ and what's unique to each. And your goal is to write each one of them well, to do a good job with each of those parts. And I'm not going to put the rubric back up, but that should, this is what's involved in getting your organization well. And, developing an idea, the better idea you have of what you're doing in your body, the more likely you are to develop that well. So those are the important lessons I want us to take away from this. So I'll show you your homework in a minute, but I'm going to introduce you. Has anyone heard of Taylor Mali? He's a spoken word artist who's also a teacher, and he does a lot of videos about different aspects of learning. And, we may have time for both of these. We're doing okay on time. And so, because I had, what I wanted you to do, he has a riff called the Impotence of Proofreading, okay? And this is a satire. He's mocking our ability to mistake one word for another or to not catch errors in our own proofreading. So what's the first error in the title here?
There's two thes.
Thank you, Kalia. There
You're
are two these there. That's one error. Do you think do you think he meant the impotence of proofreading? Do you think that's what someone intended to write? What might have been more likely?
I think he meant to put the importance of proofreading.
Thank you, Kalia. The importance. I mean, the joke here is he is in a way talking about impotence means not having power, the faulty power. Impotence is also the word for, the male sexual dysfunction is impotence. And so it's a kind of a very painful word, but the impotence of proofreading kind of talks about, is pointing at proofreading being ineffective, okay? But he wants you to understand the importance of it. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I want to show one of his other videos just to introduce you to him. And then I do think we have time to look at his proofreading video too. Neither one of them is long. And then I'll help you understand the rest of your homework. So I think I want to, can I go to it this way? Are y'all seeing the video? Is this shared? Class, can you see the YouTube?
Yeah.
You can.
Wait, no, wait. No, we can't.
You can't? Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing. I just put it up and I couldn't tell whether it was there for you to see, but hold on just a second. Now you can, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
The impotence of proofreading. Has this ever happened to you? You work very, very hard on a paper for English class and still get a very low grade on it, like a D or even a D equals. And all because you are the liverwurst spoiler in the whale wide word. Yes, proofreading your peppers is a matter of the utmost impotence.
So I've made a mistake in that I meant to show you his other one about what do teachers make. But let's just go ahead and hear this, because this is going to be your assignment to work on this one.
This is a problem that affects manly students all over the world. I myself was such a bed spiller once upon a term that my English torturer in my sophomoric year, Mrs. Myth, she said that I was never going to get into a good colleague. And that's all I wanted. That's all any kid wants at that age, just to get into a good colleague. And not just anal community colleague either, because I am not the kind of guy who would be happy at just anal community colleague. I need to be challenged menstrually. I need a place that can offer me intellectual simulation. So I know this probably makes me sound like a stereo, but I really felt that I could get into an ivory legal colleague. So if I did not improvement, then gone would be my dream of going to Harvard, jail, or prison. You know, in prison, New Jersey. So I got myself a spell checker and I figured I was on Sleazy Street, but there are several mistakes that a spell checker can't catch. For instance, if you accidentally leave out word, your spell checker won't put it in you. and God, for billing purposes only, you should have serial problems with Tory spelling, your spell check off may end up using a word that you had absolutely no detention of using, because I mean, what do you want it to do? You know? No, it only does what you tell it to do. You're the one who's sitting in front of the computer screen with your hand on the mouth going clit, clit, clit. Just goes to show you how embargo one careless little clit of the mouth can be, which reminds me of this one time during my junior mint. The teacher took the paper that I had written on a sale of two titties. And she, no, I'm serial. I am serial. She read it out loud in front of all of my assmates. It was quite possibly one of the most humidifying experiences I have ever had, being laughed at like that pubically. So do yourself a flavor and follow these two Pisces of advice. One, there is no prostitute for careful editing of your own work. No prostitute whatsoever. And three, when it comes to proofreading, the red penis, your friend, spank you.
All right. So what I've done, now you can see that was pretty silly, and there are lots of just gross mistakes and sexual puns and plays all through there. But what I've done now, let me go to your assignments. Okay, so I'm back in your assignments folder now, and so just to make one connection, here in your essay, now there's your rubric folder. So you can find that there. And for your homework, what I've got here, here's a link to the video, which we've just seen. You're welcome to see it again on your own. And I had meant to only show you the other one and save that, but I decided just to go ahead with it. And here's the text. Here's the text to what he read there. Though I don't think I had, he says at the very end, spank you. I didn't have that as part of it. But what I want you to do is to make a copy of this and correct it. And this is just a kind of playful exercise in proofreading, because he makes more mistakes here than any of you have ever likely to make in one paper. If we were doing it in class, I would divide you up into 4 groups and you would just do pieces of it. But I want you to just do for the practice of it, to do the whole thing at home. Probably the most complicated part of this is getting you to make a copy of it. I don't want you to just start writing here. And what you have to do is make a copy and move it, okay? So I'm going to show you I'm going to do one just so you'll know what I'm talking about. I've selected it. I'm now going to say, where's copy? Make a copy. And so now, where'd that copy go? Up to the top? Where did y'all see where the copy went? That was weird. I don't see my
second to last.
second.
No, it's the video. Oh, then it's the third to last.
No, wait, hold on a second. It looks like it disappeared. All right, hold on just a second. I'm going to do that again. It may be, I wonder if it's not allowing me to make 2 copies. Oh, maybe I clicked undo by accident. Yeah, here's the copy. Okay, so now what you have to do is you've made a copy yourself and now you have to move it to your homework folder. And so I'm going to go ahead and just move one. to show you how to do that. I have to go up twice. I go into the students, and I'm just going to move it down here to, where is it? I was going to move it to, let's go to, I'm going to put it in Adriana's folder. Okay, did y'all follow what I did there? You may do that all the time, but it's just a little complicated because you have to copy it. You have to first copy it, and excuse me, my screen, I'm not getting access to where I need. You have to first copy it. And here's the commands for doing that. You have to make a copy, and then you move that copy into your area. And so if you have trouble, let me know. I'll be glad to move it for you or show you how to do it. But if you get stuck.
Couldn't you just copy? Oh, sorry.
Say it again, Tyler.
I was going to say, couldn't you just copy and paste it into another doc?
You can do that as well. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, you certainly can do that. And so I may have been overly complicated. If you just open it up, you could say, Command A, select all, and what? Is there a copy here? You should be able to. Now, see, if you make a copy, it's going to make this kind of, but it should be if I have done select, wait, you're right. Surely if I select all and I say Command C, I could then go open a new document and just paste that into it. You're correct that you could do that. And if you have a printer at home, you can open it and print it. But I didn't expect everyone to have a printer, and that's why I was trying to be explicit. But you'll figure that out. And I'm glad you remembered copy and paste, okay? So now let me go back to our slides for a second. Let me see how we're doing on time. You know what I'm going to do, just because I wanted you to see it and to help you appreciate Taylor Molly, I'm going to open, this is where I had the video. You can come here and there's the proofing. Let's just watch What Do Teachers Make? And I'm assuming this is going to work. Can you see that?
Yep.
Is that's working? Okay. I meant to do this first, so you're getting it in the reverse order, but this is just to get you to appreciate him as well.
He says the problem with teachers is, what's a kid gonna learn from someone who decided his best option in life is to become a teacher? He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers, that those who can...
Bluetooth on. Powering off.
I decide to bite my tongue instead of his and resist the urge to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers. Because we're eating, after all, and this is polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor. Be honest. What do you make? And I wish he hadn't done that. Me to be honest, because you see, I have a policy about honesty and ass kicking, which is, if you ask for it, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? You want to know what I make? I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute silence. No, you cannot work in groups. No, you can't ask a question. So put your hand down. Why won't I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored and you don't really have to go, do you? You want to know what I make? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home at around dinner time. Hi, this is Mr. Molly. I hope I haven't called at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something that your son did today. He said, leave the kid alone. I still cry sometimes, don't you? And it was the noblest act of courage that I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and who they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write, and then I make them read. I make them spell definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, over and over again until they will never misspell either one of those words again. I make them show all their work in math and then hide it on their final drafts in English. I make them realize that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if somebody tries to judge you based on what you make, you give them this. Let me break it down for you. Let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. I make a goddamn difference. Now, what about you?
All right. So there you have Taylor Molly. That's just to give you I wanted you to just know who he did. You can see that's a nice tribute to teachers, but he's a very playful guy, and certainly his the Impotence is a playful piece. Mainly I want you to learn there is just to, I'm getting you to proof it mainly for fun, but the practice is pay more attention to what you write. Don't make careless errors. And that's what it's supposed to be a lesson in. Now, before I go back to my slides, let me ask, I've got two iPhones, and I'm assuming one of these is Hannah. Oh, excuse me. I think YouTube kept going. One of these is Hannah, is that right? Is this Hannah? Who's at this other iPhone 2? Okay, if you don't answer, I'm assuming nobody's here. So the only people that I can assume are in class are the one whose names I'm seeing. So we're almost at the end. Let me go back to our slides. Okay, so again, if you happen to come in late, almost only 2 people had completed their homework last week. You really need to do that because your next essay is going to be based on, or you'll be responses to these. So I want you to turn those in by Monday, okay? Only 2 students have already done that, so the rest of you, please have your homework in by Monday. So this is just repeating, excuse me, that set of questions is going to have 4 questions about George Saunders's speech and only 1 about Stephen Jobs. So here's your homework for this week. I'm going to give you 2 more essays to unscramble, and I'll show you, those are in your homework folder now, and I want you to correct that mock essay on the impotence of proofreading. And again, if you haven't done it, do your Saunders and Jobs homework. Now let me go back. I should have looked at this before we left, but let me just show you where you have your other 2 scrambled essays and what they look like. I'm sorry, I need to get back to my drive for a minute. So bear with me, I'll have it back up in just a second. Okay. Okay, so hold on. All right, so homework and in-class assignments. So if we go to the homework folder, here is a scrambled essays document. And it's got the instructions right here. It's telling you all you need to do with the two new ones is just put them in that kind of form. And it includes the cat essay, just to remind you that what we worked out there. And here are your other two essays. One's about Africa and one's about going to the movies, okay? And for these, if you go back to the instructions, I want you to put them in the right order. And after you determine the right order, come up with a title for the essay. So after you've studied the scrambled essays, you need to first say what you can write. You can copy these to your own area, or you can just even do a document where you put the right number sequence and then the title. That's all that I'm really getting from you. You don't have to answer it on top of these, okay? So you can just put that in a separate piece. But put the right sequence and give it a title. That's all I'm asking you to do with that. So also in your homework folder, as part of getting you to proof for Taylor Molly, I've added a couple of things that kind of like as reference sheets. One is just a thing on some common words that are confused. And another is a much longer list of homonyms, words that look alike, sound alike, rather, but that are different words altogether. And you probably don't, there may be some words here you'll never use. There may be words here you'd never confuse, but it's very easy for us to mistakenly write a word by sound rather than by it being the right word. And a quick example, I have a son named Ben, and I'm forever writing him email and spelling his name Ben. Now, that's an easy error. It's nothing to correct. It's not a big deal that I write it. The important thing is that I notice it and correct it. And so that's what all of this is about. It's trying to make you aware of errors that might slip into your work, but that you can correct if you just pay attention to them. Okay, so that's why I'm getting you to do the rewrite of the of Molly's piece, just so that you can do an extended practice with that. Where am I? I didn't mean to be there. Okay, so anyway, so you've got all of this with 4.2 is for this week to help you. Okay, all right, I'm going to stop there. Did either of the iPhone people speak up? One of them's disappeared. Okay. Any questions before we stop? It's just a minute past time. Well, thank you for your attention. The one thing I don't like about these formats, it's very hard to get us all to talk, but I hope that you had enough interaction there to at least follow everything that was going on. Oh, Monty, you asked me to show last week's homework slide. I'm going to post these slides in the assignment folder, okay? And so you can go to the slides there and just go to the end and you'll see the homework. Okay? I hope that was your question. I hope that answered it for you. Anything else? Okay. Y'all have a good day. Good to talk with you this morning.